All right, wrestling fans, Kurt Clapier here with another highschoolwrestlingmatches.com podcast in partnership with Jeff Newby and USA Wrestling Utah. We've also got Brian Priest on the line. As always, Brian, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me again.
Good. We got a first timer on the line. We got Cole Kelly coming to us from Parent Teacher Conferences. So if you hear him in the background explaining why someone has an F, that's why. How you doing, Cole?
Doing great. Parent Teacher Conference just finished up, so I should be good to go.
Okay, good. Yours end a little earlier than ours do. Ours are next week. And then we got Jeff Newby on tonight. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing good.
And my favorite dad, Michael Clapier. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. It's good. It's good to be among friends, including Brian Priest.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we got what I think is a cool show tonight. As always, though, I want to invite you guys to check out highschoolwrestlingmatches.com and sign up for the Daily Dose. You do that by clicking on one of the banners that say free wrestling moves. It's just a daily email we send out with some great wrestling matches, as well as some wrestling technique videos. Some we've recorded ourselves, others we've just found. So check it out. But tonight, there's two things going on tonight. The first thing is we're going to talk about the top 10 incoming freshmen, and Jeff Newby and Cole Keller are mainly going to talk about that, but we'll get to that in a second. And then after that, we're going to get into some coaching tips for young athletes, for young wrestlers, and how to use sports to develop kids and things like that. And that's why we got Mike Clapier on the line to talk about that in a little bit. But Jeff, I'm going to let you make this announcement so I don't screw it up. We have the General USA Wrestling meeting tomorrow night for the junior high. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we have the junior high meeting, annual meeting, starts at 5 o'clock Juan Diego High School. And then at 6:30 is our general members meeting. So everyone's invited to both of those meetings, basically go over what's going on this upcoming year. Any new things will be, presented there. Any questions can be brought up. So, parents, beginner parents, advanced parents, coaches, everyone's invited.
Awesome. And that's at 5 o'clock. And typically, how long does that go?
Junior high will be about 5 to 6. We'll have some food there. And then 6:30, we'll start the general members. So we'll be done by 8.
Okay. And one other question is it easy to find? Is it going to be in their gym? Where should you guys park? That kind of thing.
So it's in their cafeteria room. If you go to wrestleutah.com, instructions on where to go are there. So everything's there on the website and on our Facebook. And
you also blasted out an email that has the details.
Just send an email out also.
So watch for that email, coaches and parents, and get to that meeting. It's important. So let's jump right into it, though. We've got a top 10 incoming freshmen going on. Why do we do these rankings? First off, Jeff, what's the purpose behind this?
So rankings. We do a lot of rankings. We have this one. This one's kind of our first one we put out. We do the Beehive Top 25. We do team. We do individual. And really, obviously, everything's won and lost on the mat. Rankings are fun. They're something for the fans. There's something to talk about. And I'll be the first to say we're not going to get it right all the time. So, it's what we say isn't law, but it's fun to look at and pick apart.
Well, it would be easier. My coaching salary or coaching stipend, whatever you want to call it, would be a lot more per hour if we could just do the rankings and then call it good.
Yes.
You think we could lobby for that?
We could give it a shot.
All right. Okay, well, let's jump into it, man. You want to go 10 up? That's what I would do.
Yeah, so first thing is kind of want to go over kind of the criteria we use for this. So the top 10 incoming freshmen, it's a difficult list. We've been working on it for a little while now. And again, I understand parents are watching probably. The kids might be watching. So we'll be very careful, of what we say. But we want to explain why we put certain people where we did.
And what's difficult about it? Is it because they haven't wrestled at the high school level yet? Or is there so many different tournaments it's hard to measure?
Yeah, you look at the top 10 incoming freshmen and you have, depending on what weight they're coming in, makes a huge difference in this list.
So this is top 10 overall?
Overall. So regardless of weight.
Gotcha. Pound for pound.
So let me add something, Kurt, if you don't mind. One of the things, and that's what makes this list a difficult list, is because, you know, you've got anywhere from 106 pounders coming in up to heavyweight coming in, and let's be honest, it's tougher for a freshman that's coming in, say, at 126 or 132 than a freshman that's coming in at 106. And so as you take into consideration, we're looking at how do we think this incoming freshman will end up finishing at the state tournament.
And you know, as we put the, you know, some of the criteria we go by, just so people understand, is, you know, overall accomplishments. That's huge, obviously. You know, like Cole just mentioned, what weight you're coming in at, that plays into it. You know, if we have two kids that are even, and one's coming in at 106 and one's coming in at 152, probably the 106 is going to get the nod. You know, if they wrestled head to head, we try and take that into consideration as well. And then ultimately, it's, you know, how we think they'll end up doing, not just in their classification, but statewide. And so, you know, we try and look at, you know, a kid coming in at a loaded weight classification. You know, we look at that, but we take it as a state thing, not necessarily just classification. So.
Gotcha.
So I guess.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to ask Jeff, as you go through this, and you're probably already going to do this, but as you go through this, I'm curious to know what you think these kids will do this year.
Yeah, for sure.
Not just names and numbers, but yeah, let's jump in.
So taking us back 1 year, just to give some people, just so we can put some pressure on our number one on this list before we start going. You know, for four straight years, our number one on this list has won state in high school. So no pressure on who we put as number one, but, you know, if they break that streak, you know, we're on a 4-year streak.
So can you remind us who was number one last year?
Kohler. Zach Kohler was number one last year.
So, okay.
So he kept the streak going, and, you know, 3 out of the 4 years, our number 2 ranked wrestler has won state. So whoever our number 2 is, again, there's some pressure there as well. So our number 1 and 2 have big shoes to fill. Last year we had 3 freshman state champs that were on the list. 9 of the 10 wrestlers placed that were on the list. So again, these 10.
You guys are doing a very good job.
Yes, these 10 have a lot to live up to.
Yeah, is it that you're good at ranking them, or is it that is it good luck if you end up on the list and that just carries you through?
I think it's just good luck.
I think they're pretty good wrestlers to begin with. I'm going to go with that.
Yes.
Come back to Cole real quick. Cole tried to say something. What'd you say, Cole?
No, I think there's a lot of good kids in Utah, and I think the quality of wrestling every year continues to get better. So every year we got great freshmen coming in.
Okay. I'm going to try to type these out as we go. If I spell their names wrong,
Yes.
forgive me.
Jeff, you were saying he had some honorable mentions, maybe?
Yeah, so we're going to start, you know, every year we've done top 10, and to be honest, every year it gets tough, more and more difficult. So this year we're going to add an honorable mention. We're going to do kind of the next 10. So basically, essentially, top 20 incoming freshmen, if you want to look at it that way. So we'll hit the honorable mention quickly here. And these are in no particular order. So honorable mention is not in order.
It's 11 through 20, but they could be anywhere.
Right. These are not in any order. So one would be Joe Richardson, Juan Diego, probably come in at about 132. You got Tucker Nacarado, Payson, probably going to come in at 132, 138. And I'm just going to go through these ones super quick, and then we can kind of slow it down on the top 10. Jacob Jackson from Delta, he'll probably come in at 38, 45. Dean Thompson of Altamont, 106 probably. John Whitaker of Miller, probably coming at 145. Heston Woods, Salem Hills, probably coming in about 120. Jarrett Jorgensen from Morgan, coming at 106. Jeremy Evans from Viewmont, coming in at probably, I'm guessing 113. We got Carson Sheets from Grand, probably going to come in at 120. And then we got Wyatt Hone of Payson, probably coming at 113. So that's a pretty strong list. A couple of those kids have every argument to be in the top 10. But again, you know, we have to make a decision and go forward with what we decided. But again, I mean, those 10 are, you know, any one of them could place pretty high. And, like I said, a few of them definitely had arguments to be in the top 10, and hopefully it's debated on our website and we can get others' opinions. And there's reasons why they did not make the top 10, but again, we could be wrong. So
Well, I did notice one thing. Payson has 2 of those.
yes,
I don't know what they have in the top 10, but that's pretty exciting for Jeb. Jeb Clark, Payson.
and the Payson kids, especially Wyatt Hone, he has every argument to be in the top 10, and he's one that was debated over, and he very easily could be in the top 10. So
Okay, sounds good. And again, I'm typing these as I go, so forgive me if the names are spelled wrong. But let's go into the top 10, Jeff.
okay, so we're starting at number 10. So I'll list them, and I'll kind of get some background on the wrestler as much as I know. Also, for those watching, track wrestling, if things aren't on track, it's very difficult to include in the rankings. So, if we get things wrong, I'm sure there's someone out there fact checking us. Let us know, and we do the best we can. So, but number 10,
Jeff, the 2 guys I know that would fact check are Brian Priest and Cole Kelly, and they're with you.
Yes.
So I think you're good.
I'm kind of a little out of the loop these days, so throw me out.
You'll figure it out.
Trust
There-
Cole implicitly.
someone out there will, and it's okay. We're always trying to get more information. If it's not on track, it's very difficult for us to know. If it is on track, maybe we missed it, but hopefully we didn't. So starting at number 10, from Fremont, projected at 106, Braden Clark. So he was a tough one. Has some great wins. Has wins over Oakley Ridge. Super state champ. I think 2-time super state champ. But the reason we kept him at number 10, is the question whether he'll be up to 106. He was small last year. He wrestled up at 98 at the Slam. He struggled a little bit when he wrestled up a weight. He lost to Mason Denton. He lost to Jarrett Jorgensen. He lost to Riley Helt. And so the biggest question mark with him is, will he be up to 106? But if he is up to 106, there's a legit argument that maybe he should be higher. So, but that's why we put him at number 10. Okay. Any questions on Braden?
No, I think you said it well. From what I know of him, 10 might be a slight under rank, but I could see your logic there.
He's tough. I mean, if he's up to weight, if he's a good size 106, I can see him competing for a state title. So, I mean, he's tough.
This is where they kind of hit their growth spurt too. So
yes. Okay, number 9. Number 9, we have from Desert Hills, another 106-pounder, Riker Boyce. Riker, he won state in 2015, came second last year. He was on our national teams. He goes to all the national events. Again, he's one that I think can win state. I won't say he will win state, but my money might be on him to win state as a freshman. Super tough kid. And actually, these next couple I'm actually going to go through, and then we can go back a little bit and kind of explain some things here. Any questions on Riker?
No, good.
Number 8.
How do you spell his last name?
Boyce. B as in boy, O-Y-C-E.
Oh, I got it right. I'm a genius. Okay, go
Okay,
on.
number 8, from Fremont, again projected at 106, Mason Denton.
That's Denton's son, I'm guessing. That's his youngest, right?
It is. Mason had a great season this past year. As you can see, our number 10 and number 9 are both from Fremont, both at 106. It's going to be interesting.
Are we at 8 or 9 here?
That's 8.
8. Okay.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Mason and Braden did wrestle this year. Mason beat him 8-7, I do believe the score. So close score. Mason Denton, he wrestled Riker Boyce. So I'm going to go back to Riker for a second. Mason Denton in season beat Riker Boyce 2 times. Beat him at Super State. Mason's a Super State champ. I think he beat him at the Brawl also. So during season, from what I could find out, from what I saw, Mason Denton was 2-0 against Riker Boyce. Now here's where it gets tricky. Outside of the season, Riker Boyce, I think, was 2-0 against Mason. So when we're talking spring wrestling, Riker beat Mason at the Freestyle State Tournament. I think he beat him another time during the season also. And so that was a tricky one. Do we put Riker in front of Mason? Do we put Mason in front of Riker? And ultimately we went with in-season results over out-of-season. But again, that's another one where –
Are you looking at folk style too? I mean –
Right.
That's what we're
I actually think Riker beat Mason in folk style out in the spring.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that, but I think one of them was a folk style win. But again, it's do you put more stock in season or do you put more stock out of season? Obviously, out of season does play into this, but ultimately we went with Mason beat him twice in season, and I don't think he lost to him in season, and then lost to him twice out of season. So again, Riker has a very legit argument to be number 8 over Mason, but we put Mason over Riker and Clark because Mason does have in-season wins against both of them. Now the one downside to Mason, he did lose a match to Drake Mangum during the season, and that was I think his only in-state loss, or to someone from Utah, and he was wrestling up a weight. So again, it's tough when kids are wrestling up a weight to really gauge. Do you count that as a significant loss or not? Anyways, that's why we have Mason number 8. Anything to add there, Cole?
No, the one thing I hope those listening understand is Jeff's he's the politically correct one, and he's trying to be very, very thorough and very fair. But I mean, this could go either way, and there's a lot of kids here that deserve to be in the ranking. But you know what? Decisions have to be made, and so what Jeff's doing a good job of doing right now is kind of explaining the logic of what we went through when we made those decisions. An argument could be made for a lot of kids being in the top 10. An argument could be made that this guy at 7 should be switched with this guy at 8. But great kids, great wrestlers, and a way to recognize these kids.
Well, here's another thing too, and I've done rankings in the past. Is they will change. Competitions
They will change.
People develop it. I would say though, to me, that just looking at those 3, I think Boyce sounds like he might have the best chance to take state. To me, because of being in 3A.
Yeah.
3A classification. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Of course.
Hey, I think what you're doing, Jeff and Cole, there's 2 things that you're doing that's awesome. Number 1 is you're creating dialogue about wrestlers, and it doesn't matter as much if you're in that top 10 or if you're knocking at the door at the top 10. You're creating dialogue about the kids. You're demonstrating how important it is to have a developing program that brings a kid in at these kinds of levels as a freshman. And if I'm not in that list or my kid's not in that list, I know what my goal is for the season. My goal is to look for that kid, find him, and beat him, and then let the wrestling define what the realities are. That's one of the things that are beautiful about the sport, and I know as an official, you really don't have to get caught up in what's going on because the wrestling will decide the winner. Just stay back and let it be fair. But I think you're doing a great service and have done ever since you guys have stepped into what you've been doing, and you especially, Jeff.
Yes, I agree. These rankings, if you're not on it, you think you're lower than you should, you'll have your chance.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
Find him. Get to the tournament where he's wrestling and meet
Jeff,
him.
this is, and I'm not going to mention names, but we had a coach one time that we asked to do rankings for us for a specific classification, and this coach, he went through and he put all of his kids lower than they really should have been, and he put his kids lower than where they really should have been because he wanted to use it as locker room material to get them motivated to go out and beat that kid. So there's some psychology maybe that can go into these rankings.
And there's a tangent story to that, Cole. It's when you talk to a coach before the season and you say, what kind of team you're going to have? And he says, we got nothing. I don't know what we're even put on the mat. And then you got a coach that'll say, I think we're going to be pretty solid. The coach that says he's going to be pretty solid will not be, and the coach who doesn't think he has anything, don't even duel him. Just stay away from me because he's going to tear everybody
I
up.
always try to play it down myself, but I have to say when I was doing the rankings, I was locker room fodder, according to I don't want to say the school or the coach, but evidently I was brought up in not a good way at a region tournament by a coach trying to motivate their wrestlers about my rankings. So,
That could be any one of the 30 of us that were doing that, Brian.
yeah, probably, but I heard it from never mind. Yeah, I'm sure it happens.
No, it's good to have interest. It's good to be able to have names connected with activity, and you always know your own kid, but to know that somebody else is out there. So I don't think that where they are exactly is as important as that there's a list and there's a dialogue about who someone thinks the top 20 are. It's great. It's awesome.
I just shoot off some credit to Don Neff. I mean, I think he's the one that really started this years and years and years ago. And,
Yeah. Don's a superstar.
I think Jeff and Cole have really taken it to the next level. It's pretty cool.
All right, the suspense is killing our 16 viewers. So what's number 7?
7? All right.
Okay. Number 7
Okay.
from Pleasant Grove, 106 pounder Oakley Ridge. So going back to 7 through 10 here, these 4 wrestlers, Braden Clark, Riker Boyce, Mason Denton, Oakley Ridge, I legitimately think there's an argument for almost every single one of those kids being ahead of the other. We ultimately went with our 7 through 10. Doesn't necessarily mean it's right. I mean, you have Oakley Ridge at 7, Mason Denton at 8, and Braden Clark at 10. Those 3 will all be seeing each other at the state tournament. So they will all 3 definitely have the opportunity to prove who should have been higher. Ultimately, the reason we went with Oakley at number 7, him and Clark did beat him a few times. Oakley did beat Clark. And actually, which is kind of interesting, each of the last 2 years, Braden Clark has beat Oakley at the Super State Tournament. Oakley has beaten Braden each of the past 2 years at Northern State Tournament. So they each kind of take their turns beating each other, which will be super interesting to see what happens here in the 5A State Tournament, who wins. Ultimately, with Clark and Oakley, the reason we put Oakley above Clark is because, one, Oakley, he's up to weight. I still worry about Clark being up to weight. I don't know, I guess, on Clark. And that's, like I said, explained earlier, we put Clark at 10 because of the question mark, will he be up to weight? When he has wrestled up at the Slam, he struggled. And so that's ultimately why we ended up him at 10. Oakley, last time he wrestled Mason, which actually wasn't this past year, but the year before, he did beat Mason Denton. He did not wrestle Boyce last year, but again, the year before there, him and Boyce, I think, were 1-1. So with the win over Denton, and combined with Oakley being in PG and the great respect we have for the PG program and getting Oakley ready, we did end up putting Oakley number 7 because of that win over Mason. Those 4 were, interchangeable, really, to say the least.
Edge right there.
Right. I mean, it's if I could have done a 7 and put 4 people at number 7, I would have done it. But I felt like probably wasn't the right thing to do, so we ended up having to move them around. But anyways,
it'll come out in the wash, as they say.
It will.
That's like what Mike was saying.
That's right.
Come out in the wash.
So again, Oakley Ridge at number 7. It'll be a very fun tournament, 5A 106. You got Oakley, you got Mason, you got Braden Clark. You're going to have probably Dalton Stutzman. I mean, those are 4 guys right there, and there's others. 4 right off the top of my head, 3 freshmen and a senior. It's going to be very, very fun.
Stutzman, word on the street is that Stutzman's going to stay at 6s?
That is the word.
Wow. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
So, okay, moving on. Number 6. This kid is North Summit, projected at 132 pounds. Tyler Shern. Tyler Shern, he's a 4-time Super State champion. He beat Carson Sheets at the All-Star match. His only in-state loss this past year was to Stockton O'Brien. Figure Tyler Sherman will come in at 32. Kind of a difficult weight for a freshman to come in. He'll be in the 2A. Not for sure exactly who he'll have. I would definitely, expect him to place at state. Once I find out, I don't know exactly who he'll have, but he could very well compete for a state title, depending on who's there. But again, coming in at 32 is difficult. If he was a smaller wrestler, maybe he moves up a couple spots. But as of right now, that's why we have him at number 6.
And so, do we got his name spelled right?
No, you don't.
How you spell it?
SCHEURN. And I might have that wrong too, so I'm sure we have it wrong.
Sorry, Sharon. If you'd been in the top 5, we'd have learned your name. Just kidding.
Hey, I'm not part of this crew. Thank you.
Okay,
You're okay in my book. Okay.
number 5. From Wasatch at 113 pounds, Sammy Haywood. So
Wow, another Haywood, huh?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Another one.
So Sammy, he's a super state champ this past year. His only in-state loss was to Tyson Humphreys. He went to the USA Folkstyle Nationals, and he placed 6th place in the schoolboy division. Now, Sammy and Tyler, very close, the 5 and 6. And, we kind of went back and forth. Tyler 5, Sammy 6, and Sammy 5, Tyler 6. Ultimately, they each only have one in-state loss to the same person. And kind of what it came down to was Sammy placed at the Nationals, and Tyler actually I don't think attended. But since Sammy went and placed 6th, we gave him the nod.
And you project Haywood. It's Haywood, right? Not Word, right?
Haywood. So
you project him at 32s?
Oh,
the plan is 113. The question is, will he be able to make it? He's getting bigger. He's growing. If he doesn't make 13, he'll definitely be at 20 unless they bump him up, for a spot somewhere in the lineup. But I think tentatively, as of right now, the plan is 13. If he's at 13, he's going to be tough. He's going to be a big 13. Even coming in as a freshman, he's strong. He's tough, and definitely someone that I at 13, I think could place at state in the 4A.
Okay, so hold on a minute, though. You were talking about him and Tyler Shern wrestling, right?
So they have not wrestled.
Oh, okay. I thought you –
They just had similar credentials. But
Gotcha.
Very similar this past year.
Okay.
Sammy placed at the Nationals, whereas Tyler didn't attend the Nationals. So that's why we gave Sammy the nod at 5 over Tyler. It's because he is an All-American.
Gotcha. Yeah, that means something for sure.
Yep. Okay, now on to number 4. So number 4 from Corner Canyon, projected weight 220 pounds, Cade Carlson. Now, Cade, this one, again, a difficult one.
This is supposed to be the freshman top 10.
Yes. And
he's 220, huh?
A beast.
Awesome.
He's a beast. He freestyle national champion back in 2015. I think he was hurt this past year. He didn't get to go. 4-time super state champ. He will make an impact. Now, the question mark obviously comes in. He's a freshman coming in at 220. How is he going to handle those big kids? And maybe he's too high. Maybe he's too high because of the way he's coming in at. Maybe he'll be able to handle the upperclassmen. That's, his skill is there. It's really going to come down to, can he, match the strength of those upperclassmen. Cade is with a K, by the way.
Got it.
yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll be another Roy Nash, I guess.
Yeah. No, I definitely think, as far as big kids go, he's definitely one of the top in the country.
Yeah, that's interesting because you get a lot of stud freshmen and sophomores at the smaller weights. You don't get a lot at the 220, so that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, he'll definitely be one you'll want to watch, kind of follow, see how he does. My prediction is, throughout the season, he'll progress and get better. At that kind of weight, he may start, even if he starts slow, I think he'll figure it out by the state tournament, and I think he'll turn some heads for sure. So.
Okay, cool.
Okay, our top three. Coming in at number 3, from Bingham High School at 160 pounds, Mason Christiansen. Now Mason, he's been one of the best in Utah from the start. I mean, he's won every super state tournament we've ever had. The drawback he may have, again, is coming at a heavier weight. 160 pounds, kind of right there in the meat of the weights, and coming in as a freshman, he's gonna have his hands full for sure. I remember, not last year but the year before, McKay Foy, Isaac Wilcox, and Mason used to battle all the time. So I mean, Isaac's doing fine, Mason's doing fine, Isaac's doing fine in high school, McKay Foy's doing fine, and I expect Mason will do just fine as well. So yes, a million-time state champ.
That's impressive.
He's actually a 6-time, I do believe, but million worse also. He'll be a fun one to watch. He's the type of wrestler, he's the type of kid, if you're watching another match and he comes on, you definitely want to watch him. I still remember to this day when we had kids nationals in Utah, and Mason doesn't know this, neither does his parents, but I remember he was wrestling a match, and he's just a goer. He's a goer. He's constantly on you, double leg on the head. And I still remember at the kids nationals, he was losing, and he just kept on the kid. Finally broke him and came back and won the match. Super fun match to watch. That was probably like 5 years ago.
How did he get so good? Because there's no way it's because of Walker.
He's a Team Legacy product.
Again, I'm not with these people.
I can say that to Walker. Walker, I hope you're listening at some point, because Walker and I wrestled at Rick's together.
Got it. Yeah, Mason's at a Team Legacy. With Dean. Dean's done a great job with him. Super fun to watch. He gets after it, and as a freshman, he'll definitely be one to watch.
Awesome.
So, okay, on to the top 2. So at this point, I'm pretty sure everyone knows who our 2 finalists are. Super difficult to decide number 2 and number 1. Very close. In the end, we had to pick. So coming in at number 2 with a lot of pressure, 3 out of the last 4 have won state. Definitely want it to be 5 out of the last 6 or 4 out of the last 5. From Wasatch, 126 pounds, Stockton O'Brien. Stockton, 2-time youth super state champion, 2nd place at the Intermountain Warrior Challenge. I think he beat Cade Lincoln from Idaho this year at the Intermountain Warrior, or at the Utah-Idaho All-Star match. Another one, going to be super fun to watch. Coming in at 126, I think in the 4A, he'll be one of your favorites coming in right away.
What weight's Kohler going?
Kohler, I expect Kohler to be at 32.
Okay.
So,
that'd be some tough room right there.
Yes, I mean, you look at Wasatch, you're going to have Haywood at 13, Clough at 20, Stockton at 26, Kohler at 32. I mean, they're not going to be short on workout partners. So, again, he's not one I'm going to say will win state, but my prediction, I put him number 2 for a reason. So, he definitely, in my book, a favorite in the 4A. So, okay, number 1, he'll be at 113 from Layton, Tyson Humphreys. Tyson is a 3-time youth super state champ and a 2-time folk style All-American. So again, Tyson, his one discredit, he did lose to Wyatt Hone this year at the Salt Lake Slam. Tyson was wrestling up a weight, and actually at the time they wrestled, there was a 10-pound weight difference. So not to discredit Wyatt for that win, because that was a great win on his side. But Tyson does have a loss, I guess is what I'm saying, in state. The reason we ended up putting him number 1 over Stockton is because, nationally, he's a two-time All-American. He went out to the USA Folk Style Nationals as a schoolboy. He placed third. I think the only Utah kid to place in the schoolboy division. I could be wrong on that. Someone out there that's fact checking me, double check me. Last year as a cadet, he went out there and placed 8th. So he is on this list. From my knowledge, he is the only 2-time All-American. Stockton did not place at the Folk Style Nationals, and ultimately that's why we ended up going with Tyson. I mean, he's a 3-time state champ and a 2-time All-American. Coming in at 113 is going to be a much easier statewide weight class to come in at than 126. Tyson's a hammer on top, tough to score on. He definitely, in my book, will be one of the favorites to win state at 113. He's going to have his hands full. I'm not saying he's going to win it because I think Cole Zorn will also be at 113. And if Cole Zorn's at 13, Tyson Humphries is at 13, it's going to be a heck of a match. Definitely excited to see that one. And there's probably a couple other ones that will be in there also to contend. But Tyson's tough on his feet, tough to score on. He's a hammer on top of the legs. So he's definitely going to be one of the top kids in the state at 113 pounds. He will frustrate those upperclassmen, no doubt about it.
Well, I think based on your projection of taking state or placing high, I mean, that seems to make sense with me, with Tyson being number 1. I think 126 and 4A is going to be war.
Could be.
There's going to be some good guys. I think Stockton's in there in the mix for sure, but there's some tough guys coming back in that area for sure. That's usually where 4A, 26, 32, 38 is pretty thick.
Yep. Definitely going to be. I mean, those top 3. I mean, all 3 are going to be super exciting. All 10 or all 20, whatever you want to say. But those 3, super exciting to watch. All 3 of them, have arguments possibly to be number 1. In the end, we felt Tyson, with his accomplishments coming at 113, kind of deserved that number 1 spot. And that's our top 10.
But again, I see Wasatch with a couple in there. That's got to be real exciting for Coach Disher. I'm hoping Wasatch and Pleasant Grove got a dual schedule. That's all. That'd be a must-watch for sure.
Not to get too much into the high school season yet, because we'll release rankings later on. But not only Wasatch PG, but even more than that, personally, I'm excited to see Wasatch Payson. Depending on how lineups shake out, I think Payson matches up very good with Wasatch. Obviously, it's going to depend a lot on how the lineups end up. But I think if there's a team that's going to beat Wasatch, in my opinion, it's Payson. And the lineups for how I see them in my head at least, which obviously may or may not be correct. Payson matches up very well against Wasatch.
Now
I'm not predicting Wasatch to lose. I'm just saying. For me, that's the match, and they do wrestle. And just for those, we are planning on streaming that. We are going to stream that duel. Unless Payson has terrible luck with injuries, though. So keep our fingers crossed that they stay healthy, and it will be a battle of a duel.
Yeah, I did notice one thing that was kind of interesting to me. I didn't see any Maple Mountain kids in the top 10. That's probably amazing to me not to see a Maple Mountain or a respective Maple Mountain wrestler on the top 10 there.
Yep. They don't.
I mean, it's a pretty diverse list, when you go into the honorable mention too. So I'm glad. I think it's cool. It's spread out a little bit.
Yeah. Definitely a good list. So anyway, that's our top 10. We hope to bring on some more rankings. We'll have this posted on our website probably tomorrow. If you want to see the top 10, you got to watch the podcast, at least for the first 24 hours.
Yep. And then we'll take it off the internet forever and nobody will ever know.
Yeah, we definitely want to do the top 25 at some point, right?
Yes, that one's coming up too.
You see any of these freshmen being in the top 25 or not yet?
No, none of them will start in the top 25. Let's put it that way.
I think I'm the value or the opinion that they got to prove it.
Yeah, I just don't. Starting in the top 25 is going to be difficult unless you have just an absolute, for sure, state champ type freshman coming in. Very difficult to start in the top. I think Brock Hardy started in the top 25, but I mean it's Brock Hardy. Unless you're Brock Hardy, it's very difficult to start in the top 25. I think some of these kids can get in the top 25, but starting probably not.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, they gotta beat a couple people. That'll be
Yep.
cool. Thanks, Jeff, and thank you, Cole, for being on tonight. And it's wrestleutah.org, correct?
.com.
.com. I'm sorry. wrestleutah.com is where you can see updated rankings as we get into the season and the season goes on. Let's put this on the screen one last time for y'all, and I'm sure Jeff will post this on wrestleutah.com. I'll post it on highschoolwrestlingmatches.com as well. But here you go. One last look. And this will be fun to look back. We'll have to do a podcast in February and see where all these guys ended up. That'll be fun.
That'll be fun.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thanks for being on.
about that.
And we want to shift gears just a little bit and get away from rankings a little bit. And we started a conversation last week with when Lamont was on. If you missed that podcast, go check it out. It's last week's podcast with Taylor Lamont and his dad, Craig. And the focus was actually to kind of just talk about Lamont's experience winning bronze. If you haven't heard, he won bronze in France at the World Championships, the Junior World Championships, just a couple weeks ago. So that was the main purpose. But then it kind of turned it into a sports philosophy and a coaching philosophy podcast and a sports psychology. There are some great sports psychology tips. And that got me thinking it'd be good to have my dad on tonight. So, Mike, wake up now. We're done with the rankings.
Hey, I've been enjoying it. It's fun. It's amazing to hear how accomplished these kids are. When you were an incoming freshman, I think we knew where the workout was. I think we had that down.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't this sophisticated when I was an incoming freshman. Let's put it that way.
That's a credit to all the development stuff. That's a credit to all the development that's going on that Utah USA Wrestling's doing. It's just great.
It's awesome. So we invited Mike Clapier on tonight because he coached for how many years, Dad? 30?
20. Officiated 32 and coached 20.
And coached 20 in high school wrestling, and then at least that many in youth wrestling and youth sports, youth football, youth baseball, youth badminton, bocce ball.
Yeah.
What else did we play? So we had him
softball.
on.
Don't forget softball.
We did. We were region champs in church softball every year. That was our claim to fame.
Okay, Mike, where were you when I needed an assistant baseball coach? Come on,
yeah. I'm just good till they get to high school. I got it figured out up to about 16.
That's fun.
Yeah, I coached Kurt when he was 13. So where were you?
I hadn't learned my lesson yet.
He was at the games.
Yeah, he was very supportive. He was one of the best parents I could ever have hoped for.
I never gave you any grief, did I?
No.
Yeah.
I was coaching your kid right, I hope. I'll ask you later.
So Mike wrote a book. Mike wrote a book called Coaching Young Couch Potatoes, and Lamont accused me of being the couch potato referenced in the book. Is that true? I told him it wasn't.
No, it wasn't you. I thought the title was funny. It probably wasn't the best decision as a marketing drive because it gets miscued. I think wrestling is the best sport to teach the development of the core muscle and the cardiovascular system that will get a kid healthy for the rest of their life. There's one study that I found while I was putting my research together that wrestling for a teenage boy is the best immune system builder that there is. The workout that they go through, the large muscle, small muscle, cardio, everything you do will help you. And I believe that wrestlers who wrestle in their youth, junior high, high school especially, will be healthier adults in their 40s and 50s and 60s. So couch potatoes goes to the fact that in a society where there's 74 million kids playing youth sports and twice that many on technology, we just don't have people that are out there doing things physical, and you can see it. Walk the schools. Like Cole, you see this in the hallway. Look at the shoulders of those kids that are freshmen and sophomores. They don't work anything on their upper body. And then watch a kid walk out of a wrestling room and look at what that workout does just to the structure of himself physically. So I always took the point that the society that we have, they're couch potatoes. They don't do anything. When you were coaching baseball, Brian, when did you have a kid ride his bike to work out?
No,
They got dropped off in the SUV by mom on the cell phone, but they never rode their bike to and from. And so the kids that we're working with don't come to us with natural muscular, natural physicality. Even the farm kids, the old myth was that the farm kids all had it. Well, now farm kids just drive machines. So even the farm kids have to develop it. But they do a better job a lot of times. You know, you hear the words North Summit, South Summit, Wasatch, Payson, Delta. Those kids come from a work ethic, and a lot of those kids know what it is to work early. But we have a real problem in our culture of kids just being couch potatoes. And how do you work with a kid like that? That's where the idea came. It wasn't you at all, Kurt.
Hey, Mike, let me chime in here for just a second. Well, I have my son Zeke working out with the gym right now, and when I asked the guy his thoughts or his philosophy on younger kids lifting weights, he said to me something really interesting that I'd not heard before. He said, "Do you think that farmers out on the farm said to themselves, I'm going to wait until this kid is 14 years old to start baling hay or milking cows? Or do you think they started milking cows and baling hay from the age of 8 years old?"
Yeah.
You know? And so he says, you know, there's some science and there's some important research that's been done in terms of, you know, heavy lifting and stuff like that. But he says there's no reason why a kid at the age of 6, 7, 8 years old can't be involved in some type of hard physical activity, just like they were as 6, 7, and 8-year-olds on the farm.
Absolutely agree with that. I think you need to be careful if the weight starts to exceed their natural weight. And I always worry about kids that are that age. I think a kid that age needs to work hard. I love it when Cam Jones is my son-in-law, and so his sons, those guys they're little knots, you know, because they're physical, they're active. And so there's a musculature, there's a physicality in their body already. And you grab a kid who doesn't come from that, it's because they're not working that core muscle. I think you can work your body as hard as it can lift and as hard as it can go, but don't get in a weight room and start specifically working on weights with a kid who hasn't hit puberty yet, because I think you can do some damage there. But I think as far as lifting your own body, which is push-ups, sit-ups, leg ups, jump ups, running, don't put a lot of weight on them. I think you can work the weight of the kid. So if a kid weighs 40 pounds, kid weighs 80 pounds, kid weighs 60 pounds, he can work that much weight as hard as he can lift it and as hard as he can go. And I don't think you hurt him at all. And they should work hard because they're not neglecting that cardiovascular. But you know, in the halls, am I wrong? Do you not see kids with no shoulders at all?
Right. No doubt.
Well, I think we see a lot of kids that, man, they're already unhealthy. It's scary to me.
Yeah.
The amount of young people I see that are.
And the other part of,
you know, I'm unhealthy. I'm the most unhealthy guy on this panel right here. But I wasn't that bad when I was 18 years old or 15 years old. You know,
You're a physical specimen, Brian.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but you know,
I've heard your old man yell, Brian. I know what it was like.
Probably wasn't much different than my brother Scott. Now that guy, you know, he was he was an intramural fiend at Churchill, so that meant he could do about anything athletically.
I think he still holds some records up there.
Yeah.
But my point, really, I wrote the book because it was a journal of what I did raising my sons. I used wrestling to raise my sons, give me time with them, let them have to do hard things and learn how to come back from hard things. We did the other sports because we'd like to break it up, but I wrote the book because I wanted to journal what I learned. And I also stood watching coaches do dumb things and always thought, man, if I could just teach this guy something. But coaches are hard to teach because they all think they know it all. And so hopefully I just really wrote the book to put together my own thoughts about things. But there's some good sense of stuff in there. I think it's important. I go back to the quality of these kids that you were just talking about, Jeff. You bring these kids into the room, and then you bring a kid who's never been in a wrestling room, and they meet at a tournament. The kid who's never wrestled is really could be in a tough situation, if not even hurt, because of the physical nature of these kids, because they've got in and got at it with good quality kids. So you've got to bring the physicality of the kid. You got to be smart enough as a high school or especially junior high coach, because a lot of times the guy that's coaching is a guy willing to do it. That was my first experience.
Well, one second. Sorry to interrupt you. But on that note, I see kids all the time come in and they start as ninth graders or even older sometimes. And you talked about not having that work experience, that physical experience. They don't even know they get hurt because they don't know how to fall. They don't know how to protect themselves when they fall to the mat and things like that.
Yeah. The first time I coached, I was working on my degree. I'd refed for a while, and I knew Bob Calla really well. Bob was at Olympus High. I was doing substitute teaching while I worked on my classes, and I went to Evergreen Junior High, and they had a wrestling match that afternoon. And I said, "Can I come watch?" And I stood around and watched. And the coach was a nice guy, but he was a guy that knew how to open the door. That was his skill set. And he was willing to do it. And I watched the kids, and they were terrible. And this was before I got any understanding of technique. And I'm the least technical guy on this platform, I'll tell you that. But I know a lot more than I did when I started. And this guy knew nothing. So I went up to him after, and I said, do you mind if I come and I'd love to help out a little bit. So I showed up the next day, and I ran a couple drills because I remembered what I did in college. And he handed me the key and walked out the door, and I never saw him again. That's how I became a junior high coach. And so a lot of times kids are put in the hands of guys like that. And so now you come in and you compete with somebody like the ones that are coming out of USA Utah, and you want to let the kid have a good experience. You want to have him. The number one reason kids get into a sport is because it's fun. The number one reason they quit is because it stops being fun. So you're trying to bring in. Dan Gable says that wrestling isn't for everybody, but it should be. And so you go out there as a junior high coach and you say, hey, we're going to have a wrestling workout. You'll get a lot of kids. You might get 60, 80. We used to get 80, 90 kids at a workout. But if you don't know how to bring them along, how to judge who the kid is, look at where he is physically, have all the kids just go down the room doing somersaults, doing push-ups, doing hand walks, doing barrels, doing basic stuff. An experienced coach will soon understand what's going on. And so that was who I was trying to talk to. I learned a lot of that from Greg Williams. One of my favorite things at the end of the high school season was to give my boys to Greg's coaching. And then I'd go to freestyle and just stand around and watch. And I always would stand next to Greg and listen to him coach. And I've listened to you, Jeff. I've listened to you, Brian. I've listened to you, Cole. Although, Cole, sometimes I was in the middle of the mat and you were yelling at me a little bit. But I would love to listen to what coaches say because I've learned a lot from that. But Greg came into our room one time at Skyline, and I said, we had a good room, that room. We had Marshall Meyer, who went undefeated as a state champ. We had the Zimmerman kid who was in the finals twice. We had some decent kids, and Kurt was on the team. And we came in, we had a good room, and I said, okay, Greg, tell me how to help. Greg said, have him do this and this, just a basic front headlock motion into a penetrate step, kind of a drill thing. And then after about 30 seconds, he said, stop. I said, what? He goes, no, bring him in. He brought him in. All of a sudden, he'd seen where the problem was. You can see it in wrestling. And so the problem is that we put these coaches who don't know how to see. John Rock up at Morgan High, one of my dear friends, taught me that if you're a decent coach, you better be going to national level events and seeing what those kids are doing. And if you don't go to those levels, then know who these kids on that top 10 and top 20 list are and watch them when they warm up and when they work out and see what you need to do to move your program forward. So that was what drove me, was how do you take that couch potato and get the best out of him? Number one, let him have a great experience. And I can tell you a fantastic story about the value of a kid who never wins a match, but maybe turn him into somebody who can actually get something done for you on the mat in terms of win-loss.
Hold on a second. There's a part of your book I wanted to get into that I want to ask you about. But before I do, I want to ask Cole a question, because Cole's running, I believe, you're running the youth program medal, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of my favorite parts of coaching on couch potatoes, Mike, that I've read is your three, what do you call them? Your three types of teammates.
Team captain, teammate, and team leader.
Your three types of teammates. And so I want you to kind of explain that, and then I want to hear what Cole's experience is in that same vein, in that same regard. Because I see that a lot at the high school level. But
and we got a shout out on you, Cole. What's Steve's kid's name? Z.
Steve Sanderson?
Zolman. Steve Zolman.
Oh,
I used to work for him.
Isn't one of his boys in your team?
yeah.
Yeah, he's loving you. He says he's having a great time.
Right on.
Doesn't know what is it, but see right there, that's the point. How do you assess him at this point? You can't use a win-loss record. You can't put him in against those top 20 kids. But if you handle him right at this level, he'll be a stud before his career's done. And even if he isn't a stud, he'll have a great experience in the sport. The sport will bless young men way more than the win-loss records will.
Right.
So you're glad you're doing that. No, there's three types of kids I think that we see. We always talk about how do you motivate kids. My theory is this. There's three types of kids, and the best way to see who they are is, I'll use football. Little League football is where I first saw this. Little League football, you say to your kids, first guy down and back is the winner. Well, the team leader, the kid that naturally is driven to be a leader, who just loves competition, he'll leave before you even say what they get. He's gone. So your motivation for him is to give him that opportunity to be that guy. The team captain is the team member is the guy that wants to have fun going. He wants to know, how do we do? Do we run fast? Do we run slow? Can we hold hand? I mean, whatever. He wants more direction. That's the team member. The team leader only wants competition. The team member wants more direction, and the team captain, that's the kid that has an incredible work ethic and he's reliable. And so you look to that kid who'll be reliable. The reliable kid only wants to have that responsibility. The team member wants to have a great time. The team leader wants to have competition. But you won't motivate the competition kid by having him drill. When you drill with a kid who's a team leader, who's a kid who wants to just compete, he wants to compete. He wants to beat everybody that's with him. When you take the kid who's the team member, who wants to have a good time, the team member wants to know how to do it. So when you take the kid who's a team member and you put him with the team leader wants to beat him up. The team member wants to learn. So you've got to either temper the team leader or put the member with another member, and then together they can drill, because drill has to be mutually both guys getting better.
Or how about putting them with the team captain, if I'm understanding the mindset here.
Yeah, no, you're right. The team captain will do what you want to say, because first of all, he has integrity and he's very responsible, and he values your opinion of him. He'll respond to that. Team members can be captains. Team leaders can be captains. Teammates can be captains.
So, Kurt, let me maybe share an experience along that vein that might help our listeners understand.
Please do.
Kurt, you there?
Yeah, please do. I'm here.
All right. I've got a good group of kids that are in 3rd and 4th grade right now, and they're all, there's a handful of them that are really solid kids. And there was one of those kids, and I said to his dad, I said, "Hey, look, I know you want your boy to be in this higher level group, and I says, you've just got to trust me this one time, that by putting him with this group that you may not view as good enough for your son, if you'll allow him to be with this group, he's gonna have an opportunity to lead, and he's gonna have an opportunity to be in that room, the big man on campus. And I said, what it will do for him mentally is going to help him more than any wrestling technique that he needs to learn at this point. I said he's doing fine with his wrestling technique. He needs mentally to believe more in himself and to have confidence and believe that he's the man. And the dad reluctantly went along with what I was proposing. And throughout that season where he was with that, he ended up beating probably 6 or 7 kids that he had never beaten before, and really started to believe in himself and come out of that shell because he was the man in that room, and I know a lot of times, our wrestling mentality is we got to have that kid in the toughest room possible to push him and to try to get him the best matches and the best matchups he can in that room. Sometimes what a kid needs is he needs to be in a room where he can beat everybody up and start to believe in himself. That kid really came out of his shell that season.
That's good. You did a good job. You have to be. Dads can get a little overpowering, especially if they're very competitive, so they can get in the way of things. But you also have to be able to recognize where your kid is and how you're going to get him there and know what moves him. Some kids really don't care if they win or lose. Some kids care that you care that they win or lose. And some kids just want to win, so they're easy. They're actually the easiest one to motivate. You just give them opportunity. But if you spend all your time on the stud and neglect everybody else, Bobby Douglas taught me this. He did a clinic one time I was at, and he said, how do you deal with the stud? He said, you don't pay attention. He said, you don't spend all your time with him because you've got to bring everybody else up. He's going to take care of himself. Yeah, you look for those matches for him and you make sure you get the right workout partners for him, but you don't spend all your time with him and disregard everybody else because you can't win unless you've got a full program. And that's what I love about what you're doing, Jeff, because you're elevating those lower ranks. So when these kids come in as freshmen, they're like the ones we just described. So yeah, that's a great example.
Can I interject something here? I mean,
yeah, you bet.
I'd like to see what Cole and Jeff kind of think about this, and Kurt and you as well, Mike. But my last year coaching, I decided to kind of do something different with my practice structure, especially with the technique stuff. Is I did groups, and I had Nathaniel Holt, of course, and Michael. And like you said, I didn't work with them as much as you'd think. I kind of had, Chad Blevins, and we kind of divided our room into, the kind of what I call the high-level wrestlers, the kind of the, mid-level, and I guess kind of rookies. Being a provo, I had a lot of rookies. I didn't develop my youth programs like I should, But I spent a lot of time with probably the mid-level wrestlers, and I had Coach Darren Hershey was with me, and he was really good with working with the beginners and the rookies and stuff like that. And it's just something maybe I wish I would have done. There was always things we did together. I always say, if you want to, because I had a lot of ninth grade wrestlers that never wrestled before, a lot of sophomores that never wrestled before, teach them how to defend themselves. So when they go to the first couple meets, right, solid stance and just a lot of stuff like how to fight a half Nielsen. Get them through a match. Get them to wrestle 6 minutes if you can. Get them in shape. Get them to be able to defend themselves, and that was our main emphasis. But I spent a lot of time kind of grooming the mid-level wrestlers, and something I wish I would have maybe done sooner. And I didn't really think I'd have a pretty good team that year, but I think we ended up in the top 5 at state, and which is pretty good for a provo, and just something I wish I would have done. I don't know what your thoughts on that were, but
yeah, you need to be able to be smart enough to determine the abilities of each of your guys, and then you want to be bringing everybody up. So you don't want to bring one group ahead of the others. You can't let your stud be diminished by the fact that you spend too much time on the kids that are just showed up for the first time. But you don't want to lose a kid as a freshman, sophomore, that by the time he's a senior could contribute to you. I've seen teams in officiating and looking at team scores. I've seen teams win region and state championships with the difference not the points that the stud scored, but the difference were the points that their second, third guy scored. Because if you get a number 2 guy at state and he wins some matches nobody think he's going to win, you get pretty tough to beat. So you've got to bring everybody up. That's maturity as a coach.
Well, who does
you want every kid to have a positive experience.
Who does that better in like a Delta or a Pleasant Grove or something like that?
Well, yeah, PG's got it going on. There's no question. And Wade at Wasatch, but there's a lot of good programs, a lot of good coaches. You mentioned, that doing the best you could in the community you're in. There's some communities it's just aren't hard to build and find that work ethic and that parental support. How many times, Jeff, are you talking about a great kid and he's the 4th or 5th brother of a whole bunch of great kids?
Right. It happens a lot.
Yeah, and that's because, look at Lamont's, for example. Look at Ripplingers. Look at Essigs. Look at Cares. Those kids all come about because they come from a wrestling family where people appreciate the style, the sport, the effort, and the parents are there. So Mike Ripplinger wrote a great book one time about the fact that if you want to build a program, you look for those families. He called them anchor families, where you can bring in. Caleb, the Hardy kid didn't show up. What?
Yeah, the Hardys.
Yeah, that youngest, is it Caleb? Is that his name?
Brock.
Brock, yeah. Brock didn't show up because nobody had ever taken him to a match.
Yeah.
Brock showed up because he was growing up in the stands watching his brother wrestle. And so that, all that culture. So that's important too. But to build that in an area where it doesn't exist, that's challenging.
Well, you got the families and then you got friends. Cole, let me ask you, how many of your wrestlers you haven't met or say friends of your boys and stuff like that, And
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that you'll see, we've got, I went through the results of the state tournament last year and looked at kids that came through the medal program, and we have kids all over the valley that are competing at the high schools, and it's fun to watch. But one of the things that happens is, my best kids are around my boy Zeke's age and weight, and my next group of best kids is around my son Teague's age and weight. And there's definitely something to that, I definitely take a great interest in those kids and making sure that they're developing. I'm of the philosophy that there's synergy that exists in a room. And when you get 15 to 20 kids in a room that are all pushing each other to get better, they all get better.
You're also talking about a culture in a room. So when you got a culture that we come here, we're serious about it. We come here, we get active, we get busy, we do our things, we do our drills, we do our stretches, we do our runs, we do the things necessary. I always like to tell kids that when you love to work more than you hate to lose, then you'll be a champion. When you take a kid who comes into like junior high, you see these kids, they'll show up and they're naturally gifted. So on a baseball field, they can do pretty well in Little League. And on a football field, they got quickness and they got size. They come into a wrestling room and all of a sudden somebody can just hand them their lunch because they've got technique and ability, and they're not willing to put in the time to gain it. That's where that athlete is tough to bring in, because you got to create enough relationship with him to see the value of staying in the sport. I still love what I said earlier about Gable saying that wrestling isn't for everybody, but it should be, because everybody can be benefited by the sport, and every other sport is benefited by the skills and the basics of what we do every day in a wrestling room.
What are your tips? We got some great minds here just across the board. I'd love to hear you guys. What are your tips to keep those kids in wrestling? Because a lot of, like you said, a lot of them, they come in, they're halfway decent athletes, they get thrown on their head, they get discouraged, and they leave. And down the line that they could be awfully good. So how do you keep them in there? What are some tips? You know, I'm coming from a high school coach. I haven't really worked, with junior high or youth wrestling much, but
Well, Brian, let me speak to. We just did the top incoming freshmen. We did our top 10 list, right? And number 2 guy on that list is Stockton O'Brien. Stockton O'Brien started with my youth wrestling club when he was probably 8 years old. Okay. Stockton O'Brien, the first year that Stockton wrestled, he didn't start. A lot of kids, I try to encourage them to start in the winter season so that they have that winter season experience, and then we go into the spring. If they're enjoying the sport, we'll go into the spring and they'll start to have success in the spring. Stockton started out in the spring. He didn't wrestle the winter season his first year of wrestling. He started in the spring. Stockton O'Brien did not win one wrestling match the entire spring season. Okay. He had 0 wins his first year of wrestling. Okay. And Stockton right now is the number 2 incoming freshman on our top 10 list. But the one thing that was really important that I really tried to do is I tried to educate my parents. I tried to help them understand the learning curve that takes place. And Stockton's dad, today he walked into the room ignorant about the sport of wrestling, didn't know a lot about how the sport worked, but had a lot of friends that wrestled in high school. He went to Orem High School when Robert Still was the head coach there, and fell in love with the sport because of the culture at Orem High School.
Yep, great program.
Yeah, and so when Nate O'Brien brought Stockton into the room, he had no clue kind of what the sport was about, but he really took the time to educate himself. He really took my advice in terms of dealing with his son, and Stockton's a stud.
What brought him back second season?
An understanding that this isn't about winning; it's about developing and improving and growing.
Good job.
And so we would try to build on small improvements and small steps that he took throughout the season, in terms of if he got a takedown in a match, if he was able to stop from getting turned in parterre, if he was able to turn a guy onto his back, or any small improvements and progress that he's making throughout those matches.
Well, I find it challenging, and I'm glad you brought up the parent, because I remember, I don't know if you guys remember that Dave Ojuka that wrestled for Provo, African American kid we had. Yeah. He started as a freshman. I knew he was a natural athlete galore, but he got thrown on his head a lot. A freshman, never wrestled before. You're wrestling 145, 152. It was pretty ugly. And his mom came to me, and he comes from a single mother, and really, I had to educate her, and I just said, I promise you that you will be all state if you stay with it. And so, so I'm glad you kind of brought up the parent. If you got to, it sounds like, Cole, you got to get the parent to see the vision and not just the wins and losses, and what it's going to do for their boy, right?
And I'll bring up, since you brought him up, Mike Zolman, Steve Zolman's boy. That kid is gifted. He's a natural athlete. He's strong, but he came to me with 0 technique. Okay, and it was a situation where it's like, all right, I just got to teach this kid a few basic things, and he's going to be outstanding. I don't need to teach him a lot, because he's so athletic. He's so he's got such natural ability and natural strength. I just need to teach him a few things to allow him to have that success. I think a lot of coaches try to complicate things, and one of the things that, and no disrespect to the coach that I replaced, but when I came to American Fork High School, the kids knew a little bit about a lot, and they didn't know a lot about a little, and so I just had to break it down to the very basics and say, look, we're gonna do the basics, and we're gonna do the basics very well. And if we stay right here, you guys are gonna start to have success, and then we can build on that base. But
that's good.
It's coaching is an art form, and I applaud what's going on in the state. I remember the old days. I remember when Kurt came in. Kurt learned on all my bad mistakes, and my bad technique. And I learned, but I was open to learning. But I remember the days when dads would grab a kid by the arm or the shoulder and take him out, and say what for, or if not more stern than that, because he lost a match. I don't see that much. Kids are disappointed, sure, but I think parents do a better job of keeping it in perspective. You put too much on when it out there, there's too much effort to go into it, not to appreciate the win-loss scenario. But it always goes back to greater vision, greater purpose. What are you about? I mean, I look at wrestling today, and of course I'm still staying active. I help Greg and do the play-by-play for the Utah Valley team, and that's a kick. Get to stay and watch those guys, which is kind of the cream of all of this effort that's going into the youth ranks. Did some work with USA Wrestling, and keeping my hand in things there. But to see the quality of what's going on and the experience that's taking place, and I look at my own sons, I'm so proud of Kurt. I'm so proud of Jess. I'm so proud of Brett for who they've become. They're good guys. They're hardworking guys. They're trim. They're fit. They know how to be friends. They know how to come back from tough stuff. They know how to work through things. That's all critically wonderful. I tell people I don't worry about my grandchildren because I raised their parents. So.
Well, let me say something about you, Mike, as a parent, because I worked with you as a parent. How old are you now, Kurt, may I ask?
35.
35. So I'm 51. So I was a young coach in my mid-20s coaching Curtin baseball. And, Mike, you did. You stayed on the bench. You stayed on the sidelines. You let me coach. You were supportive. And sometimes that's really hard for parents to do that.
Thanks.
Well, Mike, I want to give everybody on the panel just one last chance to say, give their favorite coaching tip or something they want to add into the conversation, and then we want to hear where we can find the Coaching on Couch Potatoes book if anybody's interested, and then we'll call it a night.
Great book.
So start with you, Brian. Any last words on either the?
Like I said, I'm not like a youth expert like Jeff and Cole are. But Kurt, maybe this might apply to you because I think you kind of coach in a very similar thing. And I really tried hard to get the football athletes out, and just trying to get those athletes in the room. And I, like I said, just teach some really basic things. I like what Cole said. Just keep it basic. And like I said, I just kind of focused in on having a lot of wrestlers that never wrestled before. You got to meet in 2 weeks.
It's pretty much sucking because I had to miss.
What?
Well, I'm just getting some feedback, but I just saying, if you could teach those kids basically the elements of defending themselves, good stance, basics, maybe 1 or 2 shots, and just how to get through a wrestling match. And when these kids that don't have any ability get through a wrestling match, and you just see something turn on with them, that's exciting and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Every year I got a room full of kids that are brand new or practically brand new to wrestling, and so
my last thing is just love them. I mean, that's basic, but sometimes people call me Coach Love, but whatever. But I think my biggest strength as a coach is how I could take, maybe this is something I learned too much because I had a lot of kids take second place a lot in state. But, you go down there and maybe say something at the worst moment of their life as they see it. That's comforting. That that's the thing too. Wrestling, it's a tough sport. That's why a lot of kids can't handle it. It's them and another guy, and it's obvious who wins and it's obvious who loses. And just having that the love for the boys, and I've kind of see that with all of you guys and how you care about the boys that you've coached. And I think Craig Lamont said it very well too. He just said some great things about loving those kids no matter what, and seeing a loss. That's what I took from Craig the other night. He always said it didn't really matter if Taylor lost a match because he knew that would be a great growing experience for Taylor. I thought that was very profound.
All right, Cole, any last words?
Sure. Mike, thanks for your book, and love the camaraderie that exists in the sport of wrestling, and the friendships that you're able to develop. But yeah, one of the things that the sport of wrestling's tough, and I think every kid is different. So you have to coach each kid individually and make sure that you're recognizing what that kid needs and make sure they're progressing at their pace. You know, I've got 2 boys of my own. Mike, I know you've got 3 boys yourself, and the older of my 2 boys, I've been very careful about how much he wrestles. The younger of my 2 boys, I pull him away and so that he comes in a little bit hungry. But they're different personalities, and they can progress. They can progress at different paces, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cole. Newbie, any last words on either topic?
Sure. So on the, I work with a lot of youth right now, and I guess my biggest tip would be for the coaches trying to build a program out there is, focus on the parents. With the kids don't drive themselves to practice. It's the parents that get them there. It's the parents that are going to drive those kids and get them to where they need to be. And if you get the parents committed, typically the kids follow the parents. As far as the rankings go, rankings are fun, enjoyable. Take it for what it's worth. It's fun. That's it. So don't get too caught up in them. But definitely, when I was a kid, I loved rankings, and I still do. And to this day, some people love them, some people don't. But nothing's set in stone until you wrestle.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Mike, any last words?
Yeah, you can get the book at Amazon, Coaching Young Couch Potatoes, Michael Claypier. Just go to Amazon, search it, you'll find it. I'll share this thought. Leo Coker is coach at University of Chicago. University of Chicago is a Division II collegiate team, and he said this. I interviewed him at Fargo one year. He said, wrestlers love wrestling because of what it reveals to them about themselves. And I think that says a lot, and that's why it matters that we love the sport, and we love what happens to kids that are involved in the sport. So I applaud everything that's going on, and don't forget the Wolverines. They're going to be fun to watch this year. And we're doing, I think, podcasts in 4, if not 5 of the home matches. Television, full blow. Every match is on in a podcast video format. So, but we do a 3-camera shoots, pretty nice production several times. But it's fun. Got some good teams coming in. Anyway, thanks for being on. Thanks, you guys, for all you do. It's good to see you. You want to know what my next book is?
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Hey,
my next book.
Hold on. You cut out. Go on.
Yeah.
Next book. Title?
What?
How to Ref and Not Look Stupid.
You better get some help in that one.
Hey, I want to hear from Kurt. You got anything?
No, I my alarm was going off in my house. I gotta go figure out why.
Looking stupid, but you got any thoughts on coaching there, Kurt? Bill? I see just things going on at Granger.
All I'm doing is what you said, is loving them and trying to teach them the basics, which Cole pointed out, and getting numbers out. So those are the 3 things we've done for the last 3 years, and we've seen a big improvement, I believe, because of it.
And you got a winning percentage, and you're the best. You're the most winning program at the school. That's not easy to do, buddy.
That's something to be proud of.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, okay. Next week, 7 o'clock again. We've got. Is it the Wasatch one, Newbie?
Yep.
Okay, we got a Wasatch preview show, so everybody tune in, and we'll get the links out for that as soon as possible. All right.
All right. That sounds like a great show. Hey,
Okay.
when we're done, I want to talk to you. So